AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law meet my daughter after she ghosted me during my miscarriage. This has been eating away at me for a long time, and now that it's all come to a head, I'm stuck between wanting to scream and wondering if I'm being too harsh. I'm 31F and have been married to my husband, Sam, 34M, for almost 7 years. We've always wanted children, and after 2 years of trying, we were ecstatic to find out I was pregnant last year. It felt like everything was finally falling into place. We told our immediate family around 10 weeks, even though we knew the risks. We just wanted to celebrate it with our loved ones. One of the people I was most excited to tell was my sister-in-law, Rachel, 29F. We were very close, or so I thought. She was one of my bridesmaids. We did monthly brunches. She came with me to my first ultrasound appointment because Sam couldn't get off work. We talked all the time, and I saw her as not just family, but one of my closest friends. When I told her about the pregnancy, she cried and hugged me, said she was so happy and couldn't wait to be an aunt. She even helped me shop for some early baby clothes and sent me a Pinterest board for nursery ideas. So, when I miscarried at 15 weeks, she was one of the first people I messaged from the hospital. I was devastated and in shock. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just reached out to the people I loved. She didn't respond. Not that day. Not the next. Not the week after. I figured maybe she was just trying to find the right words. But after a month of silence, I texted again. Just a simple message asking if she was okay, and telling her I missed her. Nothing. She stopped replying to anything. She ghosted me entirely. She didn't reach out to Sam either. And this wasn't a case of her being offline. She was still active on social media, posting about brunches, nights out, selfies. She just decided to cut us off cold. After a couple of months, I gave up trying. It hurt like hell, but I tried to move on. I focused on my healing, my marriage, and eventually therapy. Fast forward to this year, and after another roller coaster round of IVF, I got pregnant again. I kept it quiet this time. We didn't tell anyone until I was 20 weeks. This time around, Rachel wasn't part of it. At that point, she was just someone I used to know. She was still Sam's sister, obviously, but they barely talked beyond the occasional family group chat. Our daughter, June, was born 6 weeks ago. She's perfect, healthy, squishy, and full of the tiniest little sounds that make me cry daily. We announced her birth with a single photo to close family. No big social media blast, no hospital visitors, just a peaceful few days at home. Then Rachel texted. The message came through to Sam first. A long paragraph congratulating us, saying she'd love to come meet her niece and bring some things she'd been saving for the baby since the first time you were pregnant. Sam just showed it to me without saying anything. I felt like I'd been slapped. After nearly 2 years of silence, this was how she chose to come back into our lives. Like nothing happened. No apology, no explanation, just a box of baby clothes and a convenient desire to play Anne again now that things were safe. I told Sam I wasn't okay with it, that I didn't want her in our house, that I didn't want her holding June, cooing over her like she hadn't disappeared when I needed her most. He understood, but he also said he felt stuck. He doesn't want to force me into anything, but he also feels like his sister is trying to make amends in her own, clumsy way. I asked him what that meant. Did she ever explain why she ghosted me? He said no. She just said she didn't know what to say, and that it was too heavy, and she was dealing with her own stuff. When I pressed further, he admitted that she'd been going through a bad breakup around the time I miscarried, and she was struggling with depression. I'm not heartless. I understand that people have their own pain. But she never once said that to me. She never gave me the chance to understand. She just disappeared, and now she wants to pick up like we're good? So I told him no. I'm not ready. I might never be ready. And if that means she doesn't meet June, then that's how it has to be. A few days later, I got a Facebook message from Rachel. It was long, full of what I'm sure were heartfelt apologies, but all I could see was how it had taken the birth of my child for her to finally talk to me. She said she missed me, that she regretted how she handled things, that she still considers me her sister, and that she just didn't know how to face me after the silence dragged on too long, that she froze and ran. I didn't reply. Then my email got involved. She called Sam and me separately, insisting that I'm holding on to a grudge and that Rachel is trying to make amends. She said I was being cruel by keeping Rachel from the only niece she'll ever have. Rachel is child-free by choice. That I should understand people make mistakes, especially when they're hurting, and that family is supposed to forgive. I told her I wasn't ready to have that conversation, and she scoffed and told me I needed to grow up for my daughter's sake. Now I'm being painted as the cold one, the bitter one, the one keeping a baby from her family. Sam still supports me, but I can tell it's hard for him. He doesn't like the tension, and I don't blame him. I don't like it either. But I'm not going to let someone who abandoned me in the worst moment of my life just walk back in because it suits her timing. I don't want June growing up around people who think love is conditional, who disappear when things are messy, only to reappear when the baby smell is back. But I'm also starting to wonder if I'm being too harsh, if I'm letting my own pain blind me to someone else's flawed humanity. I don't know how to measure what's fair anymore. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law meet my daughter because she ghosted me after my miscarriage. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for telling my sister I don't want to be her maid of honor because of how she treated me in high school. So I, 25F, have a sister, Samantha, 27F, who is getting married in September. We've had a rocky relationship since childhood, though we've been in touch regularly in adulthood, texting a few times a week, family holidays, birthdays, etc. I wouldn't say we're super close, but we're cordial. My parents always pushed for us to be best friends, but it never really happened. Part of that is because of how things were between us when we were teenagers. In high school, Samantha made my life hell. She was 2 years ahead of me, popular, athletic, and conventionally attractive. I was quieter, bookish, awkward, and constantly trying to stay out of her way. I wasn't expecting her to be my best friend at school, but she actively made my life worse. She'd mock me in front of her friends, spread rumors, like that I stuffed my bra or that I stalked her boyfriend, and even told a teacher once that I cheated on a test when I didn't, just so I'd get in trouble. She thought it was funny. I used to beg my parents to let me switch schools, but they'd always say sisters fight, or she's just teasing. My mom used to compare us constantly and would say I should try harder to be like Sam, which only made things worse. I got used to keeping my head down and just surviving. It was rough, and I carried a lot of that hurt into adulthood. When we both moved out, things cooled off. She'd occasionally apologize vaguely about being kind of mean in school, but never really acknowledged the extent of it. I let it go for the sake of peace, and because I figured maybe she was different now. Fast forward to last month, Samantha invited me to dinner with her fiancé, Daniel. I thought it was going to be a casual thing, but in the middle of dinner, she pulled out a little box with a necklace in it and asked me to be her maid of honor. Daniel looked so excited, like it was this big, heartfelt moment. I froze. I really did. I felt like I was watching someone else's life. I tried to be polite, said I needed some time to think about it. She seemed surprised, but let it go. Later that night, she texted me asking what was wrong, and I told her honestly that I was caught off guard because our relationship hadn't exactly been maid of honor close. She replied with something like, "But you're my sister. Who else would I pick?" I sat with it for a week, talked to a few close friends, thought about what being her maid of honor would involve, planning the bachelorette party, giving a speech, spending time with her other bridesmaids, most of whom I don't really know. I just didn't feel right about it. So I called her and told her I appreciated the gesture, but I wasn't comfortable being her maid of honor. I said I'd love to attend the wedding and support her in other ways, but that particular role felt disingenuous given our history. She got really quiet, then asked if this was still about high school. I told her, yeah, it's hard for me to just pretend that none of that happened. That's when she got mad. She said I was being petty, that she's apologized. I'd argue she really hasn't, at least not sincerely, and that I'm living in the past. She accused me of trying to punish her on her big day. I stayed calm and told her I wasn't trying to hurt her, but I needed to honor my own boundaries. She hung up on me. Since then, My mom's called me 3 times telling me to be the bigger person and that family is more important than feelings. My dad hasn't said much, but thinks I should just do it to keep the peace. Samantha hasn't reached out again, but I've seen some of her bridesmaids posting shady stuff on Instagram like, some people never grow up, and not everyone deserves a front row seat to your happiness. Part of me feels guilty. I know weddings are important and symbolic, and maybe this was her way of trying to repair things. But the other part of me feels like I've bent over backwards my whole life to keep the peace with her, and this was the first time I've really stood up for myself. My best friend, who was there for a lot of the high school stuff, says I did the right thing and that it's not my job to be a prop in Samantha's wedding story. Another friend thinks I should have accepted and used it as an opportunity to start fresh. I don't know. I don't want to be bitter, but I also don't want to perform closeness we don't have. And I feel like if I'd said yes, I'd be rewarding years of emotional neglect and bullying with a pretty dress and a speech. So, AITA for turning her down and reopening old wounds? Or should I have just let the past stay in the past and supported her anyway because she's family? AITA for refusing to let my sister walk down the aisle at my wedding because she wouldn't wear the dress I picked? So, I, 29F, got married 2 months ago. It was everything I hoped it would be. Beautiful ceremony, loving guests, emotional vows, perfect weather, all of it. Except for one thing. My older sister, Ava, 32F, who was supposed to be one of my bridesmaids, ended up not walking down the aisle with the bridal party. She was at the wedding, but as a guest, not a bridesmaid. And it caused a major fight between us that we still haven't resolved. Let me back up. Ava and I have always had a pretty complicated relationship. We love each other, but she's one of those people who always has to make everything about her. Growing up, she was the star athlete, the honor student, the one our parents always talked about at family dinners. I was more the artsy, quiet kid. Our parents tried to make it seem like they treated us equally, but it was clear Ava was the golden child. Anyway, when I got engaged to my now husband, Leo, 31M, Ava was one of the first people I asked to be in the bridal party. Despite our history, I wanted her involved. It felt like a step forward in our relationship. She was excited at first and even cried when I asked her, which really touched me. I thought maybe we had turned a corner. I picked a very neutral, flattering dress for the bridesmaids. It was dusty blue, floor length, sleeveless with a subtle V-neck. Not revealing, not frumpy. I worked with all the bridesmaids to find a dress style that would suit everyone. I had 5 total. My 2 college friends, my cousin, my future sister-in-law, and Ava. Everyone else had no issue with the dress. They even thanked me for letting them be part of the selection process. Ava, however, started complaining almost immediately. She didn't like the color because it washed her out. She said the neckline was unflattering for her body shape. She wanted to wear a deep emerald green dress with long sleeves and a square neckline, something that, frankly, didn't match the theme at all. I told her nicely that I really wanted all the bridesmaids to wear the same dress, or at least the same color and style family. She pushed back hard. Ava has always been extremely into fashion, and she made it clear she thought the dress I chose was basic and cheap looking. For context, it was $180, not designer, but definitely not cheap either. All the bridesmaids had agreed on a price point beforehand. Ava said she was willing to pay more for something she actually liked, and thought I was being unreasonable for not letting her express herself. I told her that I totally respected her fashion sense, but that this wasn't about individual expression. It was about unity and support for me. I tried to compromise and offer to let her choose a different neckline in the same fabric and color, but she still refused. She said she wasn't going to stand up there looking like a background extra in someone else's fantasy. Those were her exact words. A week before the wedding, she still hadn't ordered the agreed-upon dress. I sent a gentle reminder, and she replied that she was going to wear what made her feel confident and beautiful because she didn't want to look like crap in the wedding photos for the rest of her life. I called her after that message and told her directly, if she didn't wear the dress, she couldn't be in the bridal party. I told her I loved her and wanted her there, but I needed her to either be on board or be a guest. She got really quiet and said, "So you're choosing a dress over your sister?" I said, "No, I'm choosing the one day I get to ask people to support me unconditionally. She hung up and didn't respond to any texts for 3 days. On the day of the wedding, she showed up wearing a long, dark green dress with lace sleeves, exactly what she had originally described. She looked amazing, of course. Ava always looks amazing. But I had already told the other bridesmaids and my wedding coordinator that she wouldn't be part of the bridal party, so she sat with the guests. The ceremony went smoothly, but my mom pulled me aside during the reception and said I had publicly humiliated my sister. She said Ava was devastated and that I should have just let her wear the dress she wanted. That it was my day, but it didn't mean I had to control everyone else. My dad, on the other hand, told me I did the right thing and that Ava was being self-centered as usual. After the wedding, Ava and I didn't talk for almost a month. She finally messaged me saying she still couldn't believe I kicked her out of the wedding party over a dress. I responded and said she made that choice by refusing to compromise. She left me on read. Now it's been 2 months and the family is still talking about it. Half think I was being too rigid. The other half thinks Ava was being a diva. My cousin said I should have expected this from her and just let her do what she wanted. But to me, that feels like rewarding bad behavior. It wasn't just about the dress. It was about respecting my wishes for one day in my life where I was supposed to be the center. Leo supports me 100%, but I can tell he's exhausted by the family drama. My mom keeps asking when I'm going to apologize to smooth things over, but I don't feel like I did anything wrong. Ava is still not speaking to me, and part of me misses her, but another part of me is still angry. I keep thinking, if it had been her wedding, there's no way she would have let me get away with wearing something totally different. So, AITA for refusing to let her be a bridesmaid because she wouldn't wear the dress I chose. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her emotional support goat to my wedding, even though it means she might not come. My fiancé and I, both 29F, are getting married in June. It's going to be a relatively small wedding, about 75 guests, mostly close friends and immediate family. We've been planning this for over a year and are doing everything ourselves. The venue is a beautiful historic house with a big garden area where the ceremony will be, followed by a sit-down dinner inside. It's everything we've dreamed of, and we've been super meticulous about every detail. Now, the issue. My older sister, Karen, 34F, wants to bring her emotional support goat. Yes, goat. I'm not mocking her, at least not intentionally. But I do think the situation is getting out of control. Karen has struggled with anxiety and depression since her early 20s. I completely support her journey and always have. She's been in therapy, has tried various medications, and over the last year, she's been working with a holistic mental health practitioner who suggested she try animal therapy. Long story short, she got a goat, a literal Nigerian dwarf goat named Biscuit. She takes Biscuit everywhere she can. Grocery store, the park, farmers markets, and even brought it to a family barbecue last fall where it chewed through the cushion of my parents' patio chair and pooped on the deck. That was the first time I realized this wasn't just some cute farm pet, but an animal she considered essential to her well-being. And I sympathize, I really do. But there are limits. When we sent out our wedding invitations and RSVP forms, we included a note that said, "No pets or emotional support animals, ESA," because one of my best friends has a severe animal allergy, not just cats and dogs, but dander in general. Another cousin has a toddler with asthma, and my fiancé is immunocompromised after a long illness and can't afford to get sick. Karen called me the day after she got the invitation and immediately brought up the no animals note. I explained the reasons. She got quiet and just said, "Well, I'll have to think about whether I can come then." I was kind of floored. I asked her what she meant, and she said Biscuit goes with her everywhere and that she needs him to feel safe. I reminded her that it's just a 5-hour event, indoors for dinner, and that she could maybe step outside for breaks if needed. I even offered to have her bring a friend or even a therapist if that would help. Nope. She insisted she'd only feel safe with Biscuit. I reiterated that it wasn't a matter of us not wanting him there. It was about medical reasons, allergies, and health concerns. She told me I was being exclusionary and not making accommodations for her mental health needs. I told her I was trying my best to balance everyone's health needs, including hers, and that's why I offered alternatives. She hung up on me. Since then, things have escalated. My mom has called multiple times, pleading with me to reconsider and just make an exception, saying maybe Biscuit could stay outside during the ceremony and be kept on a leash or in a penned area. But I already spoke to the venue. Animals aren't allowed, even outside, due to insurance reasons and preservation regulations. It's a historical property. They don't allow any non-service animals. My dad thinks the whole situation is ridiculous and that Karen is being dramatic, but he won't say that to her face. My brother's on my side, but he lives in another state and isn't directly involved. My fiancée is supportive, but I can tell she's getting stressed about the drama. Her family is totally bewildered by the whole goat thing and has started joking about it, which I've asked them to stop because it feels mean-spirited. Karen has now posted vague messages on social media like, "It's always the people closest to you who don't understand your struggles," and "Mental illness isn't convenient, but it's real." Several mutual friends messaged me asking what happened. I haven't said anything publicly because I don't want to start a feud, but the pressure is mounting. To be clear, Biscuit is not a certified service animal. He is registered as an emotional support animal, but that's not the same thing and doesn't give him access rights under the ADA. I looked into it extensively. This week, Karen texted to say that unless Biscuit is allowed to come, she will not be attending. I responded and told her that while I love her and want her there, I understand if she can't make it under those conditions. I told her the door is open until the last minute and that we'll miss her if she chooses not to come. She hasn't replied since. Now, my mom is saying I'm tearing the family apart by choosing a fancy party over my sister's health. She says Karen hasn't left the house in weeks because she's so stressed and anxious. I feel horrible. I truly want her there, and I feel like I've done everything I can to make that possible, short of letting a goat into my wedding. But now I'm doubting myself. Maybe I'm being unreasonable. Maybe it's just a goat, and I should have tried harder to find a way to accommodate. Maybe a couple of allergy meds for my friend and cousin would have been enough. Or maybe I just didn't handle it as delicately as I should have. I don't know. I just keep thinking, if I allow it, I'm setting the precedent that anyone can override health and venue boundaries for their own needs. And what kind of message does that send? But if I don't allow it, I might lose my relationship with my sister, or at least damage it permanently. So, Reddit, AITA for not allowing my sister to bring her emotional support goat to my wedding, even if it means she might not come. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she sabotaged my engagement. I, 33M, come from a pretty close-knit family. My younger sister, Erin, 29F, and I were always close growing up. We went through a lot together: divorces, financial hardship, the loss of our mom 5 years ago, and it always felt like we were on the same team. Or so I thought. For context, I run a small but successful marketing firm that I built from the ground up. I've done well for myself, especially in the last 5 years. Erin, on the other hand, has struggled a bit. She's incredibly smart and talented, but her career has been a bit all over the place. She's had some rough luck with jobs, relationships, and stability in general. Because I've done well financially and we've always had a strong bond, I've helped her out a lot over the years. I paid off her student loans, covered rent a few times when she was between jobs, and even gave her a down payment for her car last year. I never expected anything in return. It just felt like the right thing to do as her brother. Now, here's where it gets complicated. I got engaged last year to my girlfriend of 3 years, Melissa, 32F. Melissa is wonderful. She's thoughtful, ambitious, funny, everything I ever wanted. Erin and Melissa always seemed to get along. They'd hang out on their own, text, send memes, whatever. It felt great, like I was merging two parts of my life that I loved. Melissa and I had started wedding planning around 6 months ago. Nothing too intense yet, just venues, budgeting, and early guest lists. Then, out of nowhere, Melissa calls off the engagement. She told me she needed to talk and sat me down one evening in tears. She told me that someone, she wouldn't say who, had sent her screenshots of messages and evidence that I'd cheated on her. Allegedly with a woman I briefly dated before I even met Melissa. The messages were edited, old photos were included, and the timeline had been distorted in such a way that it looked like I'd been cheating for months. I was floored. I've never even come close to cheating on Melissa or anyone. I had to spend days untangling everything. Eventually, through a mutual friend with some tech background, we found out the photos and messages had been altered using a couple of free apps, and that the source IP for the email that sent them matched Erin's area. That was the first punch to the gut. I confronted Erin. At first, she denied it, swore up and down she had no idea what I was talking about. But when I showed her the metadata, the IP matches, and pointed out inconsistencies in her story, she finally broke down and admitted it. She said she did it because she didn't think Melissa was right for me, that she thought Melissa was manipulating me and would eventually leave me, and that she couldn't watch me make a mistake that big. I asked her how destroying my relationship was better than just talking to me. She couldn't answer. She apologized, cried, begged me not to hate her. I told her I needed space and cut off contact for a while. I was heartbroken, not just about Melissa, though that breakup took me months to recover from, but the betrayal by someone I trusted completely. Fast forward to now, about 8 months later. Erin recently got engaged to her boyfriend of 2 years, Jake. He seems like a decent guy, and honestly, I was happy for her despite everything. We had slowly started talking again, cordial but distant. She reached out a few weeks ago to ask if I would help pay for her wedding. Not just a little help. She wanted me to fund the whole thing. Venue, dress, flowers, catering, everything. Total budget she sent me was around $28,000. I asked her why she thought I'd be willing to do that. She said because I'm her brother, I've always been there for her, and she was counting on me. She also said that after everything that's happened, she wants us to move forward and that this would be a chance to rebuild our relationship. I told her no. I told her I couldn't do that. Not just because of the money, but because of what she did to me and Melissa. She cried again, accused me of holding a grudge, said that I'd never forgive her no matter what she did. She said I was punishing her for making a mistake and that I was letting money come before family. I responded that it wasn't about money. It was about trust, about betrayal, that maybe with time we could rebuild something, but that she couldn't expect things to go back to the way they were just because she was ready. I told her actions have consequences, and while I may still love her as my sister, I don't owe her a $28,000 olive branch. Now our dad is involved. He called me and told me I was being harsh. He acknowledged what Erin did was wrong, but said she's young, she panicked, and that we've all made bad decisions. He said that family forgives, and this wedding is a chance for healing. I told him I wasn't stopping her from getting married, just not paying for it. He then said that since I have the money and she doesn't, it's not really that big of a deal for me, that I'd barely notice the money missing, but for her it would mean the world. I told him that's not the point. Now I'm getting guilt-tripped from multiple sides. A few extended family members heard what happened, though I'm guessing they got Erin's version of the story, and are sending me messages about how I'm being selfish, how Erin always looked up to me, how I'm acting like money is more important than my only sibling. I've tried explaining to a couple of them what actually happened, but either they don't believe it, or they think I should let it go anyway, because she's family. To be honest, I'm struggling with this. I never thought I'd be in a position where I had to decide between drawing a boundary and keeping peace in the family. I hate the idea of being the bad guy, especially since I've always tried to do the right thing. But I also can't help but feel that if the roles were reversed, no one would be pushing her to forgive me so quickly. So yeah, I didn't pay for the wedding. I told her she'll have to either scale back or find another way. I haven't heard from her since, though I did get a mass wedding invite last week, so I guess I'm still invited. No personal note, though. AITA? AITA for refusing to split the cost of my sister's dream wedding after she used my life savings to fund it without my permission? Let me start by saying I, 29F, am not the most trusting person in the world. I've always been the cautious, plan-ahead type, and I think that's partially because I grew up in a pretty chaotic household. My parents weren't abusive, but they were financially irresponsible to the point that my siblings and I lived in a constant cycle of feast or famine. I remember multiple times where we had to eat ramen for weeks because someone forgot to pay the power bill, or our school clothes came from donation bins while my dad went through a midlife crisis and bought a motorcycle. Because of that, I started working when I was 15, saved everything I could, skipped going to college to avoid debt, and eventually worked my way into a stable remote job in IT. I live very frugally, don't drink, don't travel much, no car payments. I've been quietly building my savings with the dream of buying a home debt-free in the next year or two. That's always been my goal. A small home, fully mine, no mortgage. I've managed to save about $125,000 over the last decade. Every penny is in a high-yield savings account under my name. Enter my younger sister, Melanie, 27F. She's always been, let's say, more social and free-spirited. She has a flair for drama and is known in the family for planning elaborate parties, getting heavily into a new interest every month, and racking up credit card debt like it's monopoly money. Despite all that, I love her. We were close growing up and even lived together briefly in our early 20s. But I learned quickly that I needed boundaries with her. Last year, she got engaged to a guy named Tyler. I'm not his biggest fan, but that's a whole different story. He's a very flashy guy, always talking about how real men treat their women like queens and flexing on social media with cars I know he leases. Melanie was over the moon when he proposed, and I was genuinely happy for her. She started planning a huge wedding right away. Think castle venue, designer dress, 7-tier cake, choreographed fireworks. I assumed she'd scale back once she realized how much it would cost, especially since neither she nor Tyler are particularly well off. But she kept saying things like, "It's my only wedding, and this is the one day I'm allowed to go all out." A few months into the planning, she called me in tears saying she was short on money and asked if I could help out a little. I told her I'd consider giving her a modest gift closer to the date, maybe $1,000 max, but I couldn't commit to anything more. She seemed disappointed, but didn't push it. Then about 3 weeks ago, I tried to transfer some fund from my savings and got an error. When I logged in, I saw that over $60,000 had been withdrawn in chunks over a 2-week period. My stomach dropped. I thought I was hacked. I reported it immediately, but it wasn't fraud in the technical sense. The withdrawals had been made using a linked debit card that I had stupidly left in my parents' house last time I visited. I'd forgotten it in a drawer while staying over. Turns out, Melanie had found the card, guessed my PIN. I'd used a family birthday. Yes, I know, dumb, and had been quietly siphoning money to pay vendors for the wedding. I confronted her in person, and she didn't even deny it. She cried, said she felt desperate, that it's not like I was using the money right away, and she was planning to pay me back over time. I was livid. I told her what she did was theft, and that I was pressing charges if she didn't return every cent immediately. My parents begged me not to, said she'd ruin her life with a criminal record. They offered to pay me back $10,000, all they could afford, and asked me to let it go because she's your sister. To make matters worse, Melanie had already paid deposits to non-refundable vendors. If she canceled now, she'd lose tens of thousands, and they couldn't afford to start over. She begged me to just come to the wedding and enjoy it, acting like this was some kind of sibling spat. I refused. I told her I wouldn't be attending, and I wanted every dollar returned, or I was going to the police. I gave her a 30-day window to start making payments, or at least show she was serious. She started crying again, saying I was heartless and money-obsessed. Now my entire family is split. My mom says I'm being cold and punishing her for a mistake. My dad keeps saying it's just money, and that family is more important. Even some extended relatives, who weren't involved at all, have started sending me messages saying I should be the bigger person and just attend the wedding for Melanie's sake. Only my older cousin, Sarah, is firmly on my side. She's a lawyer and said what Melanie did could absolutely be prosecuted, especially since it was deliberate. But even she admitted that if I go through with legal action, it'll cause a permanent rift in the family. To be honest, I don't even know what I want anymore. I'm so angry that I can barely look at my sister, let alone watch her walk down the aisle in a dress she bought with my house fund. But at the same time, I don't know if I have it in me to go scorched earth and call the cops. A few days ago, Melanie reached out again, this time more composed, and proposed a compromise. She said that if I agreed to forgive half the amount and stop talking about pressing charges, she and Tyler would put me on a payment plan for the remaining $30,000. The wedding would go on, but she'd publicly acknowledge that I helped make it happen and she'd be forever grateful. She even suggested I give a speech. I laughed out loud and hung up. Now she's telling everyone that I'm holding her happiness hostage and acting like some evil rich villain who's jealous of her big day. Our parents keep asking me to at least consider the payment plan to avoid embarrassment and move on as a family. I'm still leaning toward pressing charges once the 30-day deadline is up, but the guilt is eating at me. So, AITA for not just letting it go or agreeing to her compromise, even though it might destroy my relationship with my family. AITA for not helping my brother with his financial problems after he lied about how much he needed. I, 32M, have a brother, Jason, 29M, who has always been a bit of a wild card. Growing up, he was the charming one in the family, always making people laugh, getting into trouble, and somehow managing to talk his way out of it. He was popular in school, had a group of friends, and always seemed like he had everything under control. Me, on the other hand, I was the more responsible one. I focused on school, kept a steady job, and generally stayed out of drama. Our parents have always been more lenient with Jason, and I've often been the one to pick up the slack when things went wrong in his life. Over the years, Jason has had his ups and downs. He went through a few jobs that didn't work out, made some questionable financial decisions, and has been in and out of relationships that were never really stable. But no matter what happened, he always had a way of landing on his feet, often relying on family to bail him out when he needed it. I've always been there for him, even though it's been frustrating at times. Recently, things took a turn for the worse, and I found myself in a situation where I really had to draw the line. It all started a few months ago when Jason called me out of the blue and said he needed to talk. He sounded stressed, which isn't unusual for him, but this time there was a certain urgency in his voice that caught my attention. When we met up, he told me that he was in serious financial trouble. His rent was overdue, and he was in danger of being evicted. He had gotten behind on his bills because of some unexpected medical expenses, he said, and he couldn't find a way to make ends meet. He explained that he had borrowed money from a couple of friends, but now he was at the point where he was about to lose his apartment. He told me he had no other option but to ask for help. At first, I didn't hesitate. Jason has always been someone I've tried to support, and it seemed like he was genuinely struggling. He said he needed $3,000 to cover his rent and bills until his next paycheck. He promised that he would pay me back as soon as he could, and he seemed sincere about it. I have a stable job, and I'm financially comfortable, so I didn't think it would hurt to lend him the money. However, before I could hand over the money, I asked him a few follow-up questions to make sure I understood the full picture. I asked him how he got into this situation and why he hadn't reached out sooner. He gave me a vague answer, saying that he'd been too proud to ask for help earlier and that he didn't want to burden anyone. While I appreciated his honesty, I still felt like something wasn't quite right. But given the situation, I decided to trust him. I transferred the money to him a few days later, and he promised that he would start paying me back in small installments over the next few months. I trusted him, and for the first couple of weeks, everything seemed fine. He was regularly texting me to let me know that he was working on paying things back and that he had things under control. I felt good about helping him out. But then, things started to get weird. A few weeks after I gave him the money, I ran into one of Jason's friends at a bar. We were talking about random stuff when he casually mentioned that Jason had just bought a new car. I was surprised because Jason had mentioned needing money to pay rent, not for buying a car. So, I asked his friend about it, and he confirmed that Jason had bought a brand new car a few weeks ago. My mind started racing. The more I thought about it, the more it didn't add up. I decided to confront Jason. I called him up and asked him why he had bought a new car when he had just borrowed money from me to pay his rent and bills. He hesitated, then tried to play it off as if it was no big deal. He told me that he had gotten a really good deal on the car, that the payments were low, and that he needed a car to get to work. I pointed out that it didn't make sense to make such a big purchase when he was already struggling to pay his rent. He assured me that it wasn't going to interfere with his finances and that he would be able to pay me back soon. But I could tell that he wasn't being entirely honest with me. A few days later, I started thinking about the situation more. It started to feel like Jason was prioritizing his own wants over his responsibilities. He had borrowed money from me, promised to pay me back, and yet he was making big financial decisions that didn't seem aligned with the situation he had described. I felt like I had been manipulated into helping him, and I wasn't sure if I could trust him anymore. I decided to dig a little deeper, so I asked him to send me a breakdown of how he had spent the money I lent him. At first, he tried to brush it off, but I insisted. After some back and forth, he finally sent me an explanation that seemed a little too rehearsed. He listed rent, utilities, and medical expenses, but there was nothing specific about why he needed the new car or how he had made it work with the money I gave him. At that point, I had enough. I confronted him once again, telling him that I wasn't okay with how he had handled the money. I told him I felt like he had lied to me about his financial situation and that he had used the money I gave him for things that weren't essential. I also mentioned that buying a car while asking for money to cover basic living expenses wasn't something I was willing to support. Jason immediately got defensive. He told me I was being harsh and that I didn't understand his situation. He claimed that I was overreacting and that I was only focusing on the negative aspects. He said I was being judgmental and that he was doing the best he could. He even accused me of being selfish for not being more supportive, considering all the times he had been there for me in the past. The conversation ended with him hanging up on me, and since then, I haven't heard from him much. Some of our family members have reached out to ask if I'm okay and why I'm upset with Jason. They seem to think I'm being too hard on him and that I should have just helped him without questioning his spending choices. A few have even implied that I'm not being a good brother for not offering him a little more help. Now, I'm stuck wondering if I've made the right call. I feel like I've been taken advantage of, but at the same time, I want to be there for my brother. I just don't know if I can continue enabling his behavior. AITA for refusing to help my brother with his financial problems after I found out he lied about how much. AITA for refusing to let my sister walk down the aisle at my wedding because of her service dog. 28F, got married 3 weeks ago to my husband Jason, 30M. We had been planning this wedding for nearly 2 years, trying to save up and make it as close to perfect as possible without going bankrupt. I know every bride says their wedding is special, but for me, this was more than just a day. It was the first time in my life I was going to be in the spotlight without having to compete with my younger sister, Morgan, 24F. Morgan has a seizure disorder that developed when she was 17. It was sudden and terrifying for our whole family. She started having grand mal seizures out of nowhere, and for a while, our lives revolve around trying to keep her safe and functioning. I won't pretend I know what it's like to live with that fear, but I was there when she collapsed on the tile floor at the grocery store. I was there for the neurologist appointments. I've driven her to the ER and watched my parents cry when no medication worked for months. Eventually, after a lot of trial and error, she was approved for a seizure response dog. His name is Bodhi, and he's a beautiful black lab. He's trained to detect changes in her scent and alert her or others before a seizure starts. He also helps by laying on her to protect her from injury and has a panic button attached to his vest in case she's alone. He's a lifesaver, no exaggeration. I love Bodhi, I do, but I'm not going to lie, there's been tension. Ever since Morgan got Bodhi, she brings him everywhere, even places that don't technically require him, like small family dinners or backyard parties. I get that it's her comfort, and maybe it's easier than gauging when she might need him, but it always feels like every event becomes about him. People crowd around to ask about Bodhi, to pet him, even when she asks them not to. Strangers have taken photos of him. It's like she walks into a room and the spotlight shifts immediately, and not always in a good way. When I started planning my wedding, I told Morgan that I wanted her to be one of my bridesmaids. I even paid for her dress and tried to make things as accessible and comfortable for her as possible, including choosing a venue that was ADA compliant and had a separate room she could use if she felt overwhelmed or needed to rest. But I told her a year in advance that I did not want Bodhi in the ceremony. I know this is controversial. I just wanted one day, one ceremony that wasn't about anything but Jason and me. I asked her if she could have someone nearby holding Bodhi off to the side, and she could walk down the aisle without him and reunite with him right after. The ceremony was only 25 minutes. Morgan didn't answer right away. She said she needed to think about it. A month later, she told me she didn't feel safe walking without Bodhi and that she was hurt. I'd even ask her to be without him, especially on such a high-stress day. I told her I understood, but reminded her that she has gone without him for short periods before, including a family photo session we did last year. She said that was different because she didn't have to walk or stand for that long and had a chair the whole time. I tried to compromise again. I said she could sit during the ceremony if she felt faint and that we'd have a designated medical assistant nearby with Bodhi in case anything happened. She still said no. She was getting more upset and started saying things like, "I thought you cared about my safety more than aesthetics." A month before the wedding, Morgan told me she'd bring Bodhi to the rehearsal to prove that it wouldn't be a distraction. I didn't love that idea, but agreed. When she walked down the aisle during rehearsal, Bodhi was perfectly behaved, of course. But everyone watched him, not her. Not even me, and I was trying. The groomsmen made a couple of jokes after, like, "Guess the real star of the show has 4 legs," and I laughed along, but inside I was deflated. I didn't want my wedding to be remembered for a dog. So I made a hard call. I told Morgan, 2 weeks before the wedding, that if she couldn't walk down the aisle without Bodhi, I need to find another bridesmaid to fill her spot. I was calm but firm. I told her I loved her, but this day was supposed to be about Jason and me, not her health issues, not her dog. She cried. She screamed at me over the phone. She said I was choosing vanity over her well-being. Our parents tried to intervene, but I told them this was my boundary. If she wanted to come as a guest and sit near the exit with Bodhi, that was fine, but not as a bridesmaid. Morgan didn't come to the wedding at all. She blocked me on everything 2 days before. My parents came, but they were distant, and my mom left right after the mother-daughter dance, saying she couldn't stomach this. The wedding went beautifully, objectively. Everything went off without a hitch. The photos were amazing, and I finally felt like I had my moment. But now it's been 3 weeks, and the aftermath is heavier than I expected. Morgan still won't speak to me. My mom is cold and distant, and my dad told me he understood my side but thinks I drew a line in the sand where I didn't need to. My older cousin said I was ableist. Jason says I made the right call, but even he admitted that if we ever have a daughter with a disability, he'd hope people would be more accommodating than I was. I don't know. I'm not a monster. I didn't want to exclude my sister. I tried to find a compromise. I just wanted the focus to be on the commitment Jason and I were making to each other, without the extra layer of concern, distraction, or attention pulled away from that. But maybe that's selfish. Maybe I could have let her have Bodhi, and no one would have cared. Maybe 25 minutes wasn't worth this rift in my family. I truly don't know anymore. AITA? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to take my sister's kids after she passed, even though I promised her I would. Let me start by saying that I know how this is going to sound. I know how I must look to everyone on the outside, especially since I made a promise. But I need someone to really hear the whole story before passing judgment. My sister, Rachel, passed away 4 months ago. It was cancer. She fought hard, longer than the doctors expected, and I was there for every step. I'm 34F. She was 38. We were very close growing up, but life pushed us into different paths. She stayed in our hometown, got married, had 3 kids, now ages 10, 7, and 4, while I moved out of state for college and eventually settled into a life that's, well, very different. I don't have kids. I never wanted them. My partner, Lex, they slashed them, and I have been together for 7 years. We're both in creative industries, freelance, gig-based, always changing. We live in a 1-bedroom apartment in a city that's expensive, loud, and not at all kid-friendly. We like it that way. We love our life. About a year ago, when Rachel's prognosis took a sharp turn, she asked to talk. She was scared. Her husband had walked out a year prior, saying he couldn't handle the stress of the illness. I was furious at him, but that's a different story. Rachel asked me if I would take the kids if she died. I didn't know what to say. I was overwhelmed, heartbroken, and unprepared. But she was sobbing, so vulnerable, so desperate for peace of mind. And I said yes. I said yes, even though everything in me wanted to say no. I said yes because she was my sister, and I loved her, and I wanted to give her something that resembled comfort in the middle of all the chaos. She died 3 months later. After the funeral, the logistics started rolling in like a tidal wave. Pearl named me as the guardian. Her ex-husband, technically the children's father, had already made it clear that he wasn't in a place to parent. He's apparently living off-grid somewhere in Arizona, dating a yoga influencer and finding himself. I tried. I really did. I flew back, met with child services, stayed in her house with the kids for 3 weeks, trying to figure out what I could do. The kids are great. I mean it. They're sweet, confused, grieving, and they didn't ask for any of this. I bonded with the oldest, who reminds me a lot of Rachel. But every night, after I got them sleep, I would sit on her couch and panic. I don't know how to raise kids. I don't want to. And worse than that, I can't. Lex and I can barely afford our lives. We both work inconsistent jobs. We have no room, no flexibility, and we don't want to give up the life we built. We talked long and hard about it, cried together, made spreadsheets, talked to child services, lawyers, therapists. I came to the decision that I couldn't do it. I couldn't be what these kids needed. I asked child services what my options were. They said I could surrender guardianship, and they'd work to place the kids together with a family. Possibly foster care at first, unless another relative stepped up. That was the key part, unless another relative stepped up. I started calling everyone. My mom is gone. Our dad is in a long-term care facility and can't manage himself, let alone kids. I called cousins, uncles, people I hadn't spoken to in years. One of our mom's cousins and his wife, Bill and Doreen, in their 50s, said they could take the kids. They live 2 hours away in a rural town, have a big house, stable jobs, and no kids of their own. They knew Rachel, not well, but enough. They were warm, kind, and eager to help. It felt like a miracle. Child services approved them. The kids moved in with them 6 weeks ago. Since then, all hell has broken loose in our family. Some of Rachel's friends and a few extended relatives have been messaging me nonstop, calling me a traitor, selfish, a liar, saying I betrayed Rachel's memory, that I abandoned those kids, that I made a promise and now I'm acting like it didn't matter. One of her closest friends, Lila, even sent me a letter Rachel wrote during the last month. I hadn't seen it before. In it, she talks about how grateful she is that I'll be raising the kids, how it brings her peace knowing I'll keep them safe, how she knows I'll raise them to be creative and kind. I cried for hours after reading it. I cried until Lex had to hold me like I was the one grieving a mother. But I still don't regret my decision. I visit the kids twice a month. I send them packages. I call. I'm still in their lives. I love them, but I can't be their parent. Bill and Doreen are doing a good job. The kids seem to be adjusting. They're in counseling. The oldest draws pictures and sends them to me. I keep every one, but the guilt is crushing. Sometimes I imagine Rachel looking at me with that look she used to give when I forgot something important, disappointed, tired, hurt. And then I remember that she asked me for something impossible. She didn't mean to, but she did. So here I am, sitting in my apartment, looking at a birthday card the youngest sent me with a lopsided smiley face and a "Miss You, Annie," and wondering if I did the right thing, or if I'm just convincing myself I did so I can sleep at night. AITA? AITA for refusing to let my sister walk down the aisle at my wedding because of what she wore? So I, 28F, got married 2 weeks ago to my husband Daniel, 31M, in what was probably one of the happiest and most stressful days of my life. We planned a medium-sized wedding, around 100 guests, held at this beautiful outdoor venue in late spring. I had a pretty traditional vision for the ceremony, a romantic aesthetic, blush, and sage green palette, lace and chiffon dresses, soft lighting, the whole 9 yards. We were really particular about how we wanted everything to feel, and most people were respectful of that. Except for my sister, Leah, 26F. Now, Leah and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're close in some ways, we talk frequently and do check in with each other, but we've also always had this undercurrent of sibling rivalry. She's the type of person who unintentionally, or maybe intentionally, ends up making things about herself. She's bold, confident, and dresses in this edgy, borderline provocative style that really works for her. She owns it, and I respect that. But I also knew that I need to be specific about the dress code for the wedding. So, All the bridesmaids were asked to wear sage green floor-length dresses. I even picked 3 styles they could choose from to make it easier. Leah, being my sister, was naturally one of my bridesmaids. From the start, she pushed back a little, saying Sage wash her out, the dresses looked too matronly, and she joked about showing up in a suit or a red gown to spice things up. I laughed it off at first, but I made it clear that I really wanted everyone to match and keep the look cohesive. I told her she could accessorize however she wanted as long as she stuck to the color and length. Fast forward to the day of the wedding. I was getting ready in the bridal suite with my other bridesmaids when Leah walked in, wearing a floor-length dress, but definitely not one of the 3 I had approved. It was this deep emerald green silk gown with a plunging neckline and a thigh-high slit. Don't get me wrong, she looked stunning, like red carpet stunning, but she stuck out hard. The color was off enough to be obvious in pictures, and the design was way more revealing than anything the other bridesmaids were wearing. Everyone fell silent when she walked in. I literally felt my stomach drop. I pulled her aside and asked her what happened to the dress she agreed to wear. She shrugged and said she couldn't stand how she looked in the other options, and this one was close enough. I told her it wasn't, and that she needed a change. She rolled her eyes and said she didn't bring anything else. I tried to keep it together. I had makeup on and a million things running through my head, but I told her flat out that if she wouldn't change, or at least cover up a little like wear a shawl or something, she wouldn't walk down the aisle. She called me a control freak and said I was making a huge deal out of nothing. One of the other bridesmaids tried to mediate and offer to lend Leah her extra dress. She had brought 2 sizes just in case, but Leah refused and sat down with her arms crossed like she was being punished. My mom came in when she heard there was an issue, and she tried to convince me to just let it go, saying it was too late and we needed to start the ceremony. But I was just so frustrated. I felt like Leah was trying to steal focus, whether she meant to or not. Eventually, I told her she could stay for the ceremony, but she wouldn't be walking down the aisle with the rest of the bridesmaids. She didn't walk. She stayed seated, looking angry the whole time. After the ceremony, she left early without attending the reception, and later that night, she posted a story on Instagram with the caption, "Some people can't handle being outshined," over a picture of herself in that green dress. The fallout has been messy. My mom thinks I overreacted and should have picked my battles, especially since it was just a dress. A few cousins have sided with Leah, saying weddings are stressful, but I was being too rigid. But a lot of my friends and Daniel's family said I was totally justified and that Leah crossed a line. Leah hasn't spoken to me since, and she even skipped our post-wedding brunch. I've had time to reflect, and part of me wonders if I should have just let it go. The day was otherwise beautiful, and maybe letting her walk wouldn't have ruined the whole vibe. But at the time, I genuinely felt like my boundary had been completely ignored, and I didn't want to feel steamrolled on my wedding day. It wasn't about the dress so much as the principle. I do feel guilty, though. We've never gone this long without talking. I miss my sister, but I also feel like she owes me an apology, or at least some acknowledgement that she put herself ahead of what I had asked for on my big day. So, AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she uninvited me over a dress I was wearing. I, 28M, have an older sister, Sarah, 34F. We've always had a somewhat rocky relationship, but I've always tried to be there for her when she needed me. Growing up, she was the picture-perfect child, always getting good grades, being well-behaved, and getting a lot of attention from her parents. I, on the other hand, was the rebellious one. I struggled with school and wasn't as interested in conforming to the traditional mold of what a good child should be. As a result, we never really clicked that much. Over the years, we've had some serious fights, but we've also had moments where we've gotten along. When she got engaged, I honestly wasn't sure if I would be invited to her wedding, given the tension between us over the years. But she did invite me, and I assumed things had gotten better between us. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, she sent out the invites, and I received mine. When I looked at it, I was genuinely happy for her. I've never been the type to be super emotional about weddings, but seeing her happy made me feel good. I even told my girlfriend, Emily, 30F, how nice it was that Sarah had invited me, and I was excited to attend the wedding. Now, let me explain something. I'm not exactly the most traditional person when it comes to clothing. I tend to wear things that are a little outside the box. I enjoy expressing myself through fashion, and I'm always looking for pieces that stand out. I told Emily that I had a really cool outfit in mind for the wedding. It was a tailor navy blue suit, but with some quirky accessories, a statement tie with a floral design, a unique pocket square, and some funky shoes that were a little on the edge but still classy. Sarah knew I wasn't the most conventional dresser, but she had never really said anything about it. We've been to family events together before, and I've worn things that might have been a bit different from what others would wear, but I've always received compliments, so I felt confident in my choices. 2 days before the wedding, I received a text from Sarah. It was kind of out of the blue, and it was pretty blunt. She told me that I wasn't allowed to wear my suit to the wedding. She said it was too bold and attention-grabbing, and that it would take away from the overall vibe of the event. She didn't want anything to steal focus from her on her big day. At first, I was taken aback. I thought she was joking, but the more I read it, the more I realized she was serious. I tried to reason with her, telling her that I would look sharp and still respect the formality of the occasion, but she was adamant that it wasn't the right look for her wedding. She suggested I wear something more neutral, like a black or gray suit, to blend in better. I'll admit, I was really hurt by her message. It felt like she was undermining my style and, in a way, my identity. I didn't think my outfit was out of line for a wedding. I wasn't wearing neon pink tuxedo or anything wild like that. I simply liked expressing my personality in my clothing, and I felt like she was trying to control how I should present myself at an event that was supposed to be about celebrating love, not conforming to some rigid standard of what's acceptable. I called her to talk it out. I asked her why she was being so harsh about it, and she told me that it was her special day, and she didn't want anything to distract from the focus on her. She even said, "This is my wedding, and I have every right to ask you to dress how I want you to." I could hear the frustration in her voice, and she even started raising her voice, saying that if I couldn't respect her wishes, then I didn't need to come to the wedding at all. I was stunned. She threatened to uninvite me because of a suit. I told her that I wasn't going to wear something I didn't feel comfortable in just to avoid causing drama. I had already been looking forward to the wedding and had already planned how I was going to present myself, so I didn't want to just back down without standing my ground. She didn't take it well, and we ended up having a huge argument on the phone. She ended up saying something along the lines of, "If you can't even respect a simple request from me, then I don't want you there." I hung up feeling a mix of anger and disappointment. I had always tried to be there for her, even when we didn't see eye to eye. But now, it felt like she didn't really care about me at all. A couple of hours later, I got a formal uninvite text from her. She told me that since I couldn't respect her wishes, I should no longer plan on attending the wedding. I was honestly shocked. I talked to Emily about it, and she was equally upset. She felt like Sarah was being unreasonable and controlling. Emily even suggested I reach out to my parents and explain the situation to see if they could mediate, but at that point, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go down that road. My parents have always sided with Sarah in past disagreements, and I wasn't sure if I was prepared for that kind of confrontation. I'm now left wondering if I was in the wrong for refusing to wear a more standard suit. I feel like I'm being punished for expressing myself in a way that makes me feel good. It's not like I was trying to steal the spotlight. I just thought my outfit would add some personality to the event without detracting from her. I haven't spoken to Sarah since the uninvitation, and part of me wonders if she's justified in her decision or if she's just being too controlling. I know it's her day, but does that mean I have to completely ignore who I am just to make her happy? So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding over a suit? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me for the most ridiculous reason? I, 28F, have always had a close relationship with my sister, 30F, though over the last few years, we've started to drift apart. It's not anything dramatic, just the usual growing up and growing apart type of thing. We don't talk every day and we don't have the same interests, but we still get along and try to stay involved in each other's lives. We've never really had any major falling outs, at least none that I thought were significant. So, my sister got engaged last year to her now fiancé, Daniel, 32M. Their relationship has been a whirlwind, but she's always been the romantic type, and I was happy for her. I was even more excited when she asked me to be her maid of honor. I've always imagined being part of her wedding in some way, so I agreed immediately. We started making plans, and she began sending me dress ideas, venues, and her ideas for the wedding. I was genuinely happy to support her, and I thought we were on the same page. Everything was fine until about 2 months ago when she called me one night and started talking about the wedding guest list. She asked me who I was planning to invite, and I told her that I had a few friends I wanted to bring with me. Now, I thought that was a fair thing to say, considering that she hadn't specifically mentioned any restrictions or guidelines for guests. I'm an adult, and while I knew I shouldn't invite everyone I know, I thought inviting a couple of close friends would be fine. Well, my sister's tone immediately changed when I told her this. She started asking me how many people I was thinking about inviting, and I mentioned 3 people, 2 from work and 1 from my yoga class. She didn't seem to like that answer, and she began to tell me that the guest list was already tight because they had a limited venue, and she was being really strict about who could come. I agreed that it made sense to be selective, but then she made it clear that she wasn't comfortable with me inviting anyone she didn't already know, and that if I invited people, it would have to be people she was familiar with. I tried to explain that the friends I wanted to bring were important to me, and that I would appreciate it if she made an exception. I also explained that none of them were strangers. I had mentioned them to her in the past, but she insisted that it was non-negotiable. At this point, I was a little confused because she had never given me any kind of rules about the guest list before. I wasn't asking for a massive group, just a few people who meant something to me. Fast forward to last week. My sister sent me a text out of the blue saying that I had been disrespectful for wanting to bring people she didn't know and that it was causing her stress. She said that I had to respect her boundaries and that if I insisted on bringing these people, she'd be forced to reconsider whether I could attend the wedding at all. I was blindsided by this message. To be honest, I was already feeling uncomfortable with her rigid approach to the guest list, but this felt like an overreaction. I tried calling her to clear things up, but she didn't pick up. So I sent her a message saying that I was disappointed in her reaction and that I felt like I was being made to choose between my sister's wedding and my friendships, which felt unfair. I asked her why this was such a big deal when it was only 3 people, and that I had always supported her in the past. She finally responded, and to my shock, she told me that if I didn't respect her decision, she would no longer want me to be her maid of honor, and she would uninvite me from the wedding entirely. I was shocked and upset. I thought she was being incredibly unreasonable. The whole thing felt manipulative and controlling. I immediately told her that if she didn't want me there, then I wouldn't force myself to go. I let her know that I'd still support her from afar, but I wouldn't be part of her wedding if I had to follow her arbitrary rules about who I could bring. I told her I wasn't going to let her use me as some kind of pawn to control who I could invite. She responded with a long, passive-aggressive message accusing me of being selfish and inconsiderate. She said that this wedding was about her and Daniel, and that it wasn't about me or my friends, and that I needed to get over myself. She said I was acting like a child, and that if I couldn't respect her wishes, then I shouldn't come at all. I felt completely heartbroken. I had been so excited to be there for her, and now it felt like she didn't care about me at all. It's just a wedding, I get it, but it's still a huge deal to me, and I didn't think it was too much to ask for a little understanding. Now, I'm at a point where I'm not sure what to do. Part of me wants to attend and just go along with her rules to avoid further conflict, but I feel like it's not the principle of the matter. I don't want to be a pushover, but I also don't want to damage my relationship with my sister. I've already made it clear that I won't attend if I'm expected to follow such unreasonable demands, but she hasn't responded since our last exchange. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me for the most ridiculous reason? Should I have just gone along with her rules for the sake of family harmony? Or am I justified in feeling hurt and refusing to attend under these conditions? AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she insulted my husband? So, to give some background, my sister, 28F, and I, 30F, have never had the closest relationship. Growing up, we were always competitive, always trying to outdo each other in every little thing. Whether it was grades, sports, or even just family gatherings, there was always this underlying tension. As we got older, we both went our separate ways, and though we stayed in touch, it wasn't always smooth sailing. I'm married to my husband, Mark, 32M, and we've been together for about 5 years. We get along great, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. About 8 months ago, my sister got engaged to her fiancé, Chris, 30M. They've been together for 2 years, and while I don't know Chris that well, he seems fine enough. They were both super excited, and I, of course, congratulated them. At first, everything was great, but as the wedding planning started, I began to realize that my sister's idea of family support was, well, very different from mine. A few months ago, she asked me to be her maid of honor. I was a little taken aback at first because, like I said, our relationship isn't exactly one of best friends, but I figured this was her big day, and it would mean a lot to her. I said yes, thinking it would be a way to strengthen our relationship. I assumed the planning would go smoothly. How hard could it be, right? Spoiler alert, it wasn't smooth at all. To start, my sister has very specific ideas about her wedding, and she's been very vocal about them. I don't mind her being particular about things. It's her wedding, after all. But over time, it became pretty clear that nothing I did was ever good enough. I tried to help with her bridal shower, making sure everything was in place, but she critiqued every little thing from the decorations to the food. It was exhausting. Then there was the dress fitting. I had agreed to go with her, thinking it would be a nice bonding experience. But as soon as I got there, the atmosphere was tense. My sister kept asking me if I liked the dress, and I tried to be honest but gentle. The dress was pretty, but I thought it was a little over the top for her style. I told her that while it looked great, I wasn't sure if it was her. She snapped at me, saying I was being difficult and that I was ruining her day. I tried to apologize, but the damage was done. From that moment on, I felt like no matter what I did, it wouldn't be good enough. But here's where things really took a turn. A few weeks ago, my husband and I were invited to a family gathering at my parents' house. It was supposed to be a casual dinner, nothing fancy. When we arrived, my sister immediately cornered me and started ranting about how stressed out she was about the wedding. She started complaining about how disorganized things were going and how no one was helping her. I offered some suggestions, but instead of being grateful, she snapped, "Maybe if you spent more time helping me instead of hanging out with your lazy husband, I wouldn't be in this mess." Now, that really threw me off. First of all, Mark isn't lazy. He works long hours in a demanding job, and I honestly think he does a great job of supporting me. Second, this wasn't the first time she'd taken jabs at him. A few months ago, when we were talking about wedding details, she made a comment about how she couldn't imagine marrying someone who wasn't a real go-getter. I thought it was rude at the time, but I brushed it off. But now, at this family dinner, it felt like the last straw. I tried to stay calm and said something like, "Mark has been really supportive of me, and I'm not sure why you're attacking him." She rolled her eyes and said, "You wouldn't understand. You're too busy playing house with your husband to actually help your family." The comment stung, but I didn't want to escalate things, so I just changed the subject. Later that night, my parents pulled me aside to talk. They said I needed to step up and help my sister more with the wedding planning, as if it was somehow my fault that things were so tense. They mentioned that my sister was under a lot of stress and that I should be more understanding. I told them I felt like I was already doing a lot, but they just said I needed to try harder. At this point, I was pretty fed up. My sister had been treating me poorly, making snide remarks about my husband, and now my parents were putting the blame on me. I didn't want to make a scene, so I kept my cool, but I felt like I was being taken advantage of. I talked to Mark about it, and he was supportive but also frustrated. He suggested that maybe I needed to set some boundaries with my sister. He was right, but I wasn't sure how to do that without causing more drama. A few days ago, my sister reached out again, asking me to help with some last-minute wedding details, specifically the seating arrangements. I told her I couldn't do it, explaining that I had a lot on my plate already, and I wasn't feeling like I could continue to be involved in the wedding planning in such a major way. She was furious. She accused me of ruining her wedding and destroying her special day. She said I was being selfish and that I was making her feel like she wasn't important to me. I told her I wasn't trying to ruin anything, but that I felt like I was being disrespected and I couldn't keep sacrificing my own peace of mind for her. She hasn't spoken to me since. Now, our whole family is mad at me, And my parents keep telling me that I need to apologize for causing drama and for abandoning my sister when she needed me most. I feel bad because I know this is a big moment for her, and I don't want to ruin her wedding, but I'm also not okay with how she's treated me and my husband. So now, I'm stuck in this position where everyone is angry at me, and I don't know if I'm being unreasonable. AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she insulted my husband and treated me poorly. AITA for calling out my brother for treating his girlfriend like she's part of the family, but not acknowledging my fiancé. I, 28M, am in a bit of a tough spot with my family right now, and I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong here. For some context, I have a younger brother, Liam, 25, and we've always had a bit of sibling rivalry. We both got along while growing up, but as we've gotten older, we've become more distant, mostly due to our different life choices and priorities. I got engaged to my fiancée, Sarah, 27, last year, and things have been going well between us. Liam has been dating his girlfriend, Kate, 24, for about 2 years now. They've had their ups and downs, but things seem pretty serious, and they spend a lot of time together. I've never really had an issue with her. She's sweet, though a little more reserved, but she seems to fit with Liam's personality. The issue started when I noticed a pattern in how Liam treated Kate versus how he treated Sarah, especially at family gatherings. Whenever Liam and Kate are around, it's like Kate is already considered part of the family. He introduces her as my girl without hesitation, and she's always included in every conversation, even when it's clear that there are family topics being discussed. For example, at last year's Christmas dinner, my parents were talking about a family trip they were planning, and when I asked if they were thinking about including Sarah, my mom said something along the lines of, "Well, it's still early for Sarah, isn't it? Kate's been with Liam for so long. She's pretty much family already." It kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but I let it slide. Things came to a head at my birthday party last month. We had a small get-together at our house with close family and friends, and Liam and Kate showed up. Kate immediately started chatting with everyone, joining in on conversations, and even hanging out with my parents in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Sarah and I were sitting on the couch, and my parents didn't even acknowledge her when she came in. It felt like I was the only one who noticed how odd it was that my fiancé, who had been in my life for years and was clearly an important part of it, was treated like a second-class citizen. I eventually pulled Liam aside and said something along the lines of, "Hey, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but Sarah doesn't really feel like she's being treated the same as Kate. I'm not asking for special treatment, but we've been together a long time, and I think she deserves more recognition from the family." Liam gave me a confused look and said, "What are you talking about? We've only known Sarah for a few years, and she's not even my girlfriend. Kate's been around longer." "I thought you knew that." I was taken aback. "That's not the point," I said. "You're treating Kate like she's already part of the family, and Sarah's been in my life way longer than Kate has. I need you to acknowledge her too." Liam rolled his eyes and walked away, muttering something about me overreacting. At this point, I was already feeling frustrated. I know my family isn't perfect, and I understand they have their dynamics, but it felt incredibly dismissive of Sarah. After that conversation, I made a point to not engage with Liam much the rest of the night. The next day, my parents called me to ask what had happened. Apparently, Liam had told them about the conversation, and they weren't happy about how I handled it. They said I should have been more understanding and not made it such a big issue. My mom told me that Kate has just been in the picture longer and that it was natural for her to be treated like family. I told them that while I understood that Sarah deserves to be treated with the same respect, and my feelings were hurt. This led to a big family discussion that night, and my parents told me I was being too sensitive. Liam also seemed frustrated, claiming I was making things unnecessarily difficult between him and Kate, and that I was putting my own issues onto them. Now, my relationship with Liam is tense, and I feel like my family is siding with him. I've tried to explain my perspective multiple times, but it seems like no one is really getting it. Liam and Kate still act like everything is fine when we hang out, but I can tell there's some underlying tension. I'm also really upset that my parents seem to be minimizing how Sarah and I feel. I've been questioning whether I'm just being overly protective of Sarah or if it's justified to want equal treatment for her in our family dynamic. I feel like I'm stuck between defending my fiancé and keeping the peace with my family. The whole situation has left me feeling isolated, and I'm unsure if I'm in the wrong for calling it out. So, AITA for calling out my brother for treating his girlfriend like she's part of the family, but not acknowledging my fiancé. AITA for asking my wife to stop bringing up my ex during arguments. So here's the situation. I, 34M, have been married to my wife, Emily, 32F, for 5 years. We have 2 kids together, a 3-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. Before Emily, I was in a long-term relationship with my ex, Sarah, 35F, for about 7 years. We broke up about 6 years ago, and it was a pretty messy breakup, but I moved on and have been happy with Emily for the most part. Here's where things start to get complicated. Emily has a habit of bringing up Sarah during arguments. It's like she can't help herself, and it drives me nuts. I get that we all have insecurities, but it feels like Emily has some weird fixation on Sarah that she just can't shake. It doesn't matter what we're fighting about. The laundry, me not taking out the trash, something small. At some point, Emily always finds a way to bring up Sarah. I know it's not directly about Sarah herself, but more about the idea of me being with another woman before her. It started off small at first, like, oh, well, Sarah always used to take care of the laundry, so I guess I'm just not as good as her. That was annoying, but I let it slide. Then it became, I'm not surprised you forgot about the kid's doctor appointment. Sarah always had her stuff together, so why can't you be more like her? And that's when I started getting frustrated. Every time it happens, I tell her to stop, but it keeps happening. I feel like she's using my ex as some sort of comparison standard, and no matter how much I love her or how hard I try to be a good husband and dad, I'll always fall short because I'm not Sarah. Last week, we had another fight. It was about something really small. Who's supposed to take the kids to the park on Saturday? I told her I'd take them, but then I got caught up with work and had to reschedule. She immediately started bringing up Sarah again, saying, I bet Sarah never would have forgotten. She always knew how to make her schedule work for the kids. I told her that this wasn't about Sarah, that we should be talking about our relationship and our problems, not comparing everything to my past. She started getting upset and said that I was overreacting and that I had no idea how hard it was for her to always feel second place to someone who isn't even in the picture anymore. I think part of it is that Emily feels threatened by the idea of Sarah because Sarah was my long-term partner, and Emily is still somewhat insecure about that. She knows Sarah and I had a solid relationship, and they've met a couple of times at family gatherings, which I think has only added fuel to the fire. To be fair, I didn't do a great job explaining to Emily how I felt about the way Sarah is always brought up. I was so caught up in trying to defend myself and prove I wasn't like my past self that I didn't really listen to her. But now it's becoming a real problem, and I'm feeling exhausted. The more Emily brings up Sarah, the more I feel like I'm being judged for something that happened years ago, and it's not even an issue anymore. I don't bring up my ex when we argue. I don't even talk about her much unless it's relevant. But every time we have an issue, it feels like Emily defaults to comparing me to Sarah, and it just makes everything worse. We tried talking about it last night. I told Emily that it's hurtful when she brings up Sarah, because it makes me feel like she doesn't trust me. She got upset and said that she does trust me, but that I can't expect her to just forget about the fact that I was with another woman for a long time. I get that it's not something that can be forgotten, but it feels like she's using it as a weapon against me every time we fight. At this point, I don't know if I'm asking too much. I don't want to invalidate her feelings or make her feel like her insecurities aren't important, but I also don't think it's fair for me to constantly be compared to my ex. I just want to have a conversation where it's about us, not my past. And I'm starting to feel like if she keeps bringing up Sarah, it's going to drive a wedge between us. I've tried being patient, but it's getting hard to ignore. AITA for asking my wife to stop bringing up my ex in arguments. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me over a misunderstanding. I, 28F, have a sister, Megan, 26F, who has always been a bit of a perfectionist. We've always had a somewhat strained relationship, but I figured that as adults, we could work through our differences. Megan recently got engaged to her fiancé, David, 29M, and while I was happy for them, I was also feeling a little nervous about the wedding. It's not that I don't want her to be happy. It's more that I knew things would get complicated with our family dynamics. To give some background, Megan and I grew up in a household where my parents were very focused on appearances and keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. It was all about looking perfect, acting perfect, and doing things in the most pristine way possible. I've never been quite that person. I'm more laid back, and while I do value family, I've always struggled with the high expectations my parents set. This tension has always existed between me and Megan because she's much more of a people pleaser and someone who thrives in those kinds of environments. The problem started when I was asked to be a bridesmaid. Megan and David are having a pretty extravagant wedding, like over the top in every sense of the word. The venue is beautiful, but the costs are also pretty high. She sent out the initial details, and it was clear that there were specific expectations for the bridesmaids. There was a color palette to follow, specific dress styles, and rules about how we were supposed to do our hair and makeup. All fine and well, I suppose, but the dress she picked for me was honestly just not me. It was expensive, uncomfortable, and just didn't fit my personal style. I didn't want to create drama, so I tried to let it go. But then came the fitting. The dress, which was already pricey, didn't fit at all, and when I tried it on, it was way too tight. I asked the bridal shop if they could order a different size, but they told me it would take weeks, and I didn't have that kind of time. I suggested that Megan and I go back to see if we could find something else. She was a bit disappointed, but agreed. However, when we arrived at the shop, Megan immediately started getting irritated when I said I wanted to try a different dress that was more affordable and more comfortable. She snapped at me, saying something along the lines of, "This is my day, and I want everything to go perfectly. You're not going to ruin it by wearing something cheap." It stung, but I let it slide for the moment, hoping it was just the stress talking. But later that night, she texted me saying that if I wasn't going to follow her specific wedding guidelines, I shouldn't be in the bridal party. I was hurt, but I took a deep breath and tried to approach the situation calmly. I explained to her that I had been trying to be supportive, but that the dress was just something I couldn't wear. I also expressed that I understood the importance of the day, but that I didn't want to be put in a position where I felt uncomfortable or like I was failing her as a sister. Megan didn't take that well. She accused me of being selfish and said that I was making her wedding all about me. She also told me that if I wasn't going to follow her rules, it was better if I just didn't attend at all. I was shocked. To be clear, I had never said I wouldn't attend the wedding. I was just struggling with the bridesmaid dress. But she made it clear that the issue wasn't about the dress itself, but about me not respecting her vision for the day. She said that she didn't need anyone in her wedding party who wasn't fully on board with everything. At that point, I realized that my sister was more focused on her ideal wedding than on our relationship as sisters. I tried calling her to talk it out, but she ignored my calls. Eventually, I sent her a message asking if we could have a civil conversation about it. Her response was short and harsh. She told me that if I wasn't going to follow the rules, she didn't want me involved at all, and maybe I should stay home. So, that's what I decided to do. I didn't respond right away, but after thinking about it, I realized that I didn't want to be part of a wedding where my sister couldn't even have a conversation with me without getting angry and accusatory. I told Megan I wouldn't be attending her wedding and that I felt like her priorities were out of line. She responded by calling me a drama queen and saying that I was ruining everything by making this such a big deal. Our parents got involved too, and they tried to convince me to go, saying that it's just a wedding and I should put aside my feelings for the day. But it wasn't just about the wedding. It was about how Megan treated me and how she disregarded my feelings. Now, I'm feeling like I'm the wrong here. I know weddings are a big deal, and I get that Megan wants everything to be perfect. But I just feel like I'm being pushed out because I wasn't willing to follow her every demand, even when it came at the expense of my comfort. It's not like I wasn't willing to compromise. I tried, but in the end, it felt like she cared more about her vision for the day than about our relationship as sisters. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after everything that's happened? Am I overreacting by not just swallowing my pride and going anyway? I've tried to be understanding, but the way she's acted has left me feeling really hurt and like I'm not even a priority to her. I'm still not sure if I made the right decision, but at the same time, I'm not willing to let her walk all over me either. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she insulted my fiancé? I, 28F, have a sister, 30F, who I'll call Emily. We've never had the closest relationship, but it wasn't bad either. We shared a lot of the same friends growing up, and our families are reasonably close. However, as we've gotten older, our paths have diverged. Emily is a bit more traditional in her outlook on life. She's always had this need to be perfect and expects everyone around her to follow a similar standard. I, on the other hand, tend to go my own way, and while I'm not a total rebel, I definitely don't adhere to the same level of expectation she has for others. For example, I'm not really into the whole follow a timeline thing, like getting married in your late 20s, having kids by 30, etc. I've been with my fiancée, been 29M, for about 3 years now, and while we are committed to each other, we don't feel any rush to get married or have kids. We're very happy with the way things are, and I've never felt pressured to do things according to anyone's timeline. Recently, Emily announced that she was getting married. She's been with her fiancé, Mark, 32M, for 2 years, and they got engaged about 6 months ago. I was genuinely happy for her when she told us, but I could tell she was already stressing about the wedding details. Emily has always been a bit of a control freak when it comes to big events like this. She wanted everything to be perfect, which is fine. If it makes her happy, I wasn't going to be the one to rain on her parade. The problem started when she started making demands about the guest list and what everyone should wear. It all came to a head when Emily called me one afternoon to discuss the wedding dress code. She told me she wanted the bridesmaids and anyone who was attending to be dressed elegantly and conservatively. She emphasized that it was her big day and that she didn't want anything distracting the attention from her and Mark. I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, I've been to plenty of weddings, and I've worn whatever was asked of me, so I thought I'd do the same for her. However, the real issue came when I asked her about bringing my fiancé. She had met Ben a few times, and while she didn't seem overly enthusiastic about him, she always said she was happy for us. But when I asked about the guest list, she got unusually cold and said that Ben wasn't really her type and that she didn't feel comfortable with him attending. I was taken aback by that comment, but I let it slide at first, thinking maybe she was just trying to keep the wedding intimate or whatever. But then, she said something that absolutely threw me off. She said, "I just don't want anyone looking too casual or unpolished, especially if they're going to be around me and Mark. I don't want the attention to be diverted. Ben doesn't exactly have the best taste in clothes, does he?" This was totally out of left field, and I felt like I was slapped across the face. Ben isn't a slob. He's just not into the whole flashy, designer clothing scene that people sometimes associate with class. He dresses casually, and when we go to events, he always looks put together and presentable. Emily's comment made me feel like she was calling him and me uncultured or low class. I tried to talk to her about it, but she dismissed my feelings and just said that it was her wedding and she didn't want tacky people there. It was at this point I started questioning everything. I had been excited for her wedding, but this conversation felt like a slap in the face. I couldn't understand why my relationship with Ben was being judged based on something so superficial. I started to feel like I wasn't welcome at her wedding, and that if I went, it would just be a reminder of how out of place I felt in her perfect, polished world. I confronted Emily later that evening and told her that I wasn't comfortable attending her wedding if she felt that way about Ben. I told her that I was really hurt by her comments and that it wasn't just about the dress code. It was about how she was treating my fiancé and, frankly, me. She didn't take it well. She accused me of overreacting and being selfish for making her wedding about me. She said that it was a special day for her and that I needed to get over myself. She even mentioned that if I was really committed to family, I would put aside my personal feelings and support her no matter what. In the end, I told her I wouldn't be attending. I said that I couldn't support an event where I felt like I wasn't wanted, especially when she was openly insulting my partner. She got angry and said some pretty harsh things, like that I was ruining her wedding with my ridiculous drama and that I was embarrassing myself. She even said I was making a spectacle of myself and that if I didn't come to the wedding, I was effectively cutting her out of my life. Since then, we've been at an impasse. Our family is divided. Our parents are upset with me for not going, and they keep telling me that it's just a wedding and I should let it go. But my friends, some of whom have known Emily for years, have been supportive of my decision. They agree that Emily was out of line and that she's acting entitled. I've been questioning myself ever since. Was I too harsh? Should I have just sucked it up and gone to make her happy? My fiancé, Ben, is obviously on my side and says that no one should ever make me choose between family and him. But part of me wonders if I was too quick to cut off my relationship with her. I don't want to lose my sister, but I also don't want to keep putting up with her treating me or Ben like we don't matter. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she insulted my fiancé. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.